Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We will do a couple of intros here and just give it another minute for folks to join. For anybody that does not know me, I'm Nadine, CMO at Prodoscore. I've been here since late February of 2020. Experienced quite a lot of change around how we work along the way since that time. I am joined by Mike Perrone, our CRO. Mike's been on board since essentially the company's inception, more or less. He's a great resource for all things Prodoscore technology and data. He'll kind of be walking you through just an intro to the solution overall and give you kind of a taste for what we do. A couple housekeeping items. Attendees are in listen-only mode. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the chat or the Q&A box. We'll do our best to address as many questions as possible at the end of the webinar. I think that's pretty much it. We should be ready to go here. So I will jump right in. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about what work once looked like with a more traditional in-office setup, what we've experienced over the last couple of years or so, and then kind of what we're expecting in the coming years as it relates to different work models. As I said, we'll wrap with an intro to Prodoscore and how our data and solution can really drive success in the future of work. So there was a time when basically all we knew was in-office work, right? We all collaborated in person. We celebrated birthdays and holidays and, all sorts of things together in real life. I remember busy days in the office when there were lines of people holding laptops, standing outside of a conference room waiting to get in. We took afternoon coffee walks and did, Friday happy hours. Over time, we saw the office itself kind of upgrade as far as like what it looked like, right? There was cooler office space with maybe a rock climbing wall or ping pong table, and a fully stocked kitchen with free beer on tap. We had things like sleep pods at one of the offices that I actually worked at. Sadly, I never managed to nap in them, but just some of the perks that we kind of started to see in office spaces over the years. What we also saw was this open office concept start to become more and more popular. And that meant that you could cram more people into the space and maybe save on rent. But on the flip side, it often meant noisier offices, fewer opportunities for private conversations, maybe fighting to be heard amongst multiple ongoing calls. And in some cases, it meant soul-crushing commutes and expensive parking and walking in the rain or the cold to get to your office. It also meant more money spent on lunches out and gas and clothing, all the things that we remember from those days in the office. It also sometimes meant less time with family and friends, right? I'm sure we all remember frantically leaving the office to make it to your kid's dance recital or your gym class or your dentist appointment. The list goes on. I definitely do not miss those days myself. Fast forward to, March of 2020, everything came to a screeching halt. I'm not going to go into all the details of what that looked like, but we did very quickly kind of figure out how to keep things running smoothly without that physical office space. Of course, there were challenges, but I think on the whole, it's safe to say that organizations made it work. And today we're at a place where there's so much talk about where we go from here. Is everybody going back to 5 days in an office? Are we fully remote? Is it some sort of, hybrid model? Maybe that's the best solution. I honestly don't think that it's a one-size-fits-all approach. I think some people really miss the personal interaction and the dedicated workspace, while others prefer to avoid those long commutes and, dealing with getting dressed in the morning. But what does seem clear is that for organizations to succeed today, they're going to have to offer some kind of flexibility. I came across this graphic a while back, and I think there's some truth to it, but also a little bit of nuance. So, on the right-hand side, you see the image of working at home 100% of the time. That's obviously not sustainable, and I don't think that should be the goal at any point. But for a lot of us, absent the distractions of an office, we can get a lot more done at home. For others, that may not be the case, right? Maybe they don't have a dedicated workspace. Maybe their kids are running around. Maybe their partner is also working from home. So again, I think this idea of a hybrid model comes into play and potentially becomes the most logical way forward. There's really no real answer or a right or wrong answer outside of the fact that I don't think things are going to go back to the way they were. Employees are demanding some sort of flexibility today. We see that in survey after survey, but employers need to have some kind of accountability to offer that flexibility, right? They want to know that remote team members are in fact engaged and that it is business as usual, regardless of where employees are. And that's really where Prodoscore comes in. So with that, Mike, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah, I would say, what you just described there, Nadine, is very relevant. So, traditionally, my team, we're meeting with executives of organizations in this. There's the constant discussion. Usually they come to us and they're saying we need visibility. And we ask, why do you need visibility? And, 9 times out of 10, the answer is, well, we've got a hybrid work and we need to, have better visibility into our employees. And that's kind of, it's very relevant, and a lot of organizations are not alone when it comes to this topic. And we feel with Prodoscore and our EPM solution, we've really been able to kind of give that leadership, that executive team, the accountability that they're looking through with the visibility. So at a high level, Prodoscore, it's an employee productivity monitoring solution. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the thousands of things employees do on a daily, weekly basis, take all of that data in, and then give the executive team a way to be able to digest that data. And we do that by putting it into what we call a Prodoscore, a productivity score. And think of the productivity score almost like a FICO score. If a lender, if you go buy a car today, Nadine, and the lender has the ability to make a decision on giving you a loan or not within seconds because they use a FICO score. If that didn't exist, they'd have to go through your financial history for years. And so I want to relate the Prodoscore to a FICO score in the fact that it's a leading indicator into performance, whether Nadine drops 5% or 50% over a given amount of time. We're able to alert the leadership of potential challenges, or as well as potential burnout. So we take all those data points in and we produce the Prodoscore. And so what type of questions and the things that come from the visibility we provide is, are your employees engaged with the tools, right? Tool adoption is a big one, right? In a remote world, we're using more collaboration tools, more of the Office suite tools, CRMs, those type of things. And so you're really able to identify, which tools they're using and your best employees, how they utilize those tools, right? So you get a really good understanding from a visibility perspective with these remote and hybrid teams on how they go about their day. You could start to see when they, average start time, when the average end times. We're actually seeing that remote employees start their day earlier and end their day later, right? From our behavioral studies, which is kind of fascinating, versus kind of the old traditional way of being in an office. You get in at 9, you leave at 4, and you're kind of done for the day. So you're actually able to see with these remote employees that the time span of the day is actually that's actually increased. So you're able to identify who's working too hard, right? I've got an example of one of my employees. She constantly works from 7 o'clock at night to 10 o'clock at night, and I'm aware of that situation. I only see this employee, a few times a year. However, I have kind of, with this type of visibility, I can see the type of throughput she's putting out. And I've had conversations with it about it. And, that 7 to 10, she's not, strenuously working. She's got her laptop. She's watching, The Bachelorette, that type of thing. But she's able to prepare for the next day. And I'm at least aware of the type of work ethic that I've got with an employee. And those are some of the powerful visibility components you get as a leader of people. I'm able to see that this is a very hardworking employee that's willing to put in the time. And I want to spend my time with that employee. And that's kind of, Nadine just kind of popped to the check engine light. And this is a great example of, when you think of your car, for example, when the check engine light goes off, it could be a blown transmission. It could be a loose gas cap, right? We never know the severity of it. And that's similar with Prodoscore, right? For example, Nadine could go up 40%, week over week, or down 40%. And let's say she did go down 40%. It's at least the check engine light to a leader to knowing that one-on-one to have that conversation. And it just so happens that she was, having, challenges that week, right? And you have the coaching conversation, and then the next week I'm able to see Nadine's back up 40%. It's just that type of visibility that helps you as an executive and to help kind of coach your employees, is having that type of visibility around kind of a check engine light for your employees. So the solution, obviously, I'm not going to go into a full demo today of Prodoscore, but these are a few of the views that I think give you kind of a good idea as an executive of the employee inputs that go into producing this Prodoscore. It could be your Office suite, right? Your OneDrive, your Teams chats, your Google Chats, OneDrive, depending on your Office suite, your email, your calendar time, Zoom meetings, right? Google Meets. We take in all of those data points. We take in the chat, right? All of the collaboration that we're seeing within organizations, as well as CRM activities, all the other business software that they're using, like LinkedIn, or for us, we use Zoom Info or LinkedIn Sales Navigator. We'll tie into all those business applications, take all that data, and in this example up there, that employee with the thousands of things they did, it outputs a Prodoscore of a 92. Then what we can kind of show you is kind of the heartbeat of that employee. So you could start to understand in different departments or different orgs within your team, when do they start their day? When do they end their day? Looking at the high performers, when are they starting? When are they ending? Low performers, right? When do they start? When are they checking in? When are they checking out? Really to give you a really good understanding of kind of the behaviors of the employees and what's making them up to be successful. You can see, like I talked about earlier, like different trends, right? So in that example, you could see Ashley Palmer. She's a 47 week over week. I see a 34% decrease. And we can alert you on that. So it's a nice way to kind of be able to see that. And maybe you see that Ashley Palmer goes up 50%. That might be a potential burnout week over week, right? So it's just going to give you those insights in a digestible fashion that you can take action on. There's a couple things I want to hit on when we think of Prodoscore in deploying a software like this, right? So it's a very easy installation. It actually works out of the Azure marketplace for Microsoft 365 clients, in the Google Workspace, Google Workplace for Google clients. You're able to download it right from those different applications. It's about a 15-minute install. And kind of the beauty of it being it's all API based is we can actually go back and get that data. So day one, when you implement Prodoscore, the next day you've got a 90-day look back on all your data. And we use that data to start to build out the algorithms and the scoring by the different roles. And another important part here around employee-friendly versus non-invasive technology is Prodoscore only ties into the business cloud tools. It's very important to kind of get that across because maybe some of our competitors or this employee productivity monitoring space over the last 20 years, it's been around, but it's been agents on a laptop. So those are the type of things you might see on, LinkedIn or Instagram, where it's mouse movements, right? Mouse jigglers. It's looking at, are you moving your mouse? It's recording your screen. It's looking at if you're on Instagram or YouTube. Prodoscore only looks at the business applications, right? So it's very employee friendly. We actually provide the employee feedback and a productivity score for themselves to kind of benchmark and so forth. So it's a very easy solution to implement. It's non-invasive, and it really can provide the employee as well as the employer the type of visibility and accountability they're looking for to provide the flexibility.
Thank you, Mike. All right, so we're going to open it up to some questions. As a reminder to all the attendees, please go ahead and type any questions into the chat box or the Q&A. Let's see, I see a couple things coming in. We'll get through a few of these, and then anything we miss, we'll send in a follow-up email. So first question here, you said you only capture business activity. What do you mean? How does that work?
Yeah, so depending on what what role they're in. Let's use a salesperson, for example, right? So when you think of the business activity of a sales professional, you would need to tie into their office suite, right? So in this example, let's say we're tying into their Office 365. We would pick up all of the business activity that they're doing in their office suite. So for example, if I jumped onto a Teams meeting from my mobile device, I'm going to capture all of that data into Prodoscore. So let's say I was on a Teams meeting for 30 minutes. Microsoft 365 is going to push that data to Prodoscore. It doesn't have anything to do with the device or anything like that. Let's say I go into Salesforce, my CRM as a sales professional, and I update leads. Salesforce is going to push the data to Prodoscore, right? So we'll tie into your core business applications and get the software to talk to Prodoscore. And so it takes all of those data points in. It looks at the role that you're in. So let's say you're an inside salesperson versus an enterprise salesperson. They are going to be using the same tools, but their behaviors will be different, right? An inside salesperson might be on the phone for an hour and a half a day, where an enterprise person is more doing strategic proposals, that type of stuff in their office suite. It's going to take in those behaviors and then output the Prodoscore for the different role that they're in. So again, to answer your question, it's just business activity, and it's the cloud business tools that your organization uses.
Awesome. There's a question here about what types of products we capture, but I think that was covered. So if we didn't answer that question, please just reach out to us directly. Okay, you talked about burnout a little. Are there other examples you can share of how this type of data would be helpful?
Yeah, so it's one of the big things that we've talked about today is kind of remote versus in office, or hybrid schedules versus constantly being in office. One thing we didn't talk about today is Prodoscore actually has the ability to pull you actually would get 3 Prodoscores. You'd have your Prodoscore, then you would have an in-office Prodoscore and a remote Prodoscore. So we actually have the ability to pick up if an employee's in the office or if they're not, and then it would give you data and insights on, are your employees more productive remote or in office, or gosh, we have to bring this department back into the office because of performance levels, or oh my gosh, we can get rid of office space. Look at how great this department does remote. And we've actually, early findings on this data is that if you are a good employee in the office, you actually maintain or get better remote. The only drop that we see from remote employees, to kind of debunk this theory of like no one works when they're remote, is actually the bottom employees that are actually low performers when they're in the office. They actually get worse when they go remote. And so our early findings are that it's really not the place, it's more the person, right? That it's more on the individual of where they can be more successful than it is, oh, we can't have, remote or hybrid schedules because it's not productive. It's actually the person more than it is kind of the place where your employees are working.
Awesome, thank you. Next question here. What's the biggest driver in buying this type of solution?
Yeah, I think the biggest driver, one of our largest accounts, big government agency, I would say that is kind of a big catalyst that we're seeing, that organizations are, it's kind of settled in now after kind of COVID, and people are really trying to understand, the different productivity levels of their remote in an office. And some of the big catalysts are that employers, when they roll everyone back to the office, there's a lot of pushback, right? And so to be able to roll something out like Prodoscore, in this example that I was talking about, the government agency, they actually built it into their telecommute policy, right? So they rolled it out for thousands of employees because the employees were churning. They were quitting the organization because they were driving them all back to Manhattan, and they didn't want to deal with the commute anymore. So they actually created a telecommute policy. If you're going to elect into this telecommute policy, then Prodoscore exists on these employees. And what's fascinating about this example is that 90+% of these employees elected into the telecommute policy, basically saying like, I'm good with you having a Prodoscore and having this type of data as long as you provide me flexibility. So I'd say a big catalyst around the remote and hybrid and the employee potential pushback of going back into an office and those type of things.
That's actually a very good segue to this next question. There's a question here that says, do you ever get feedback from employees that end up having Prodoscore?
Yeah, there's a huge perception that like if my employer looked at my business data that this is like Big Brother in a way. And based on the data that we collect, it's already there, right? Like a lot of the data lives in Salesforce reports or call logs or different KPIs organizations track. So we really haven't seen that type of pushback based on the data that we collect. Now, if we collected that, Nadine's on Instagram for 4 hours a day, that might be a little invasive, right? And I could see employees not wanting their employer looking at that type of thing. But since we only collect business data, there hasn't really been any pushback. I've been doing this now for 4 years, hundreds of clients, and I've never once had a customer come back to me, Mike, why did we roll this out? My employees are all upset. It's very rare. The only pushback we ever see or that I've had actually rolling this out is from the bottom employees. I think top employees want their executives or their managers to know how hard they're working on a daily, weekly basis to provide them that type of visibility.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for the great questions. I think there might be a couple more here. Like I said, we'll follow up via email. And if we did not answer anybody's question, please feel free to reach out. We will make sure to get you an answer. Thank you guys so much. Thanks, Mike.